From day one, my administration.
And underage girls, and they had very explicit labels on them. They had the victims' names. They said young nudes. So these were some of the things that prosecutors, if this case does go to trial, will have to support their case.
Just want to bring you some live pictures now coming in from Hong Kong, where
the connection with the work of the Clinton Foundation. Staff, supporters of the foundation, and his Secret Service detail traveled on every leg of every trip. He had one meeting with Epstein in his Harlem office in 2002, and around the same time made one brief visit to Epstein's New York apartment with a staff member and his security detail. He's not spoken to Epstein in well over a decade and has never been to Little St. James Island, Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, or his residence in Florida. And that island is a reference to an island that Epstein owns that's right off of St. Thomas in the Caribbean, where a lot of this activity is presumed to have occurred. What possibly could Jeffrey Epstein offer to the prosecutors that might be worth more than prosecuting Jeffrey Epstein?
I mean, from where I sit, it would have to be something pretty extraordinary. As a general matter, federal prosecutors don't like to give cooperation agreement to child sex traffickers for good reason. I mean, it is sort of the worst of the worst, and it would have to be really extraordinary information for them to take that kind of extraordinary step into trying to cooperate him. Now, that doesn't mean that he won't try or there won't be some sort of discussions, but I would be absolutely shocked if they offered somebody charged with, not just a one-off, case, but really this pattern of doing this over years with, as they say in the indictment and in the detention memo, dozens of victims in both Florida and New York. I would be shocked if they ended up offering him some sort of a cooperation agreement.
Tim, very thorough statement by Bill Clinton tonight. Of course, if any piece of that proves to be untrue, that would be a big problem. But he's never been to the private island. Some people have accused him of being. But Donald Trump, I can't imagine Donald Trump issuing a statement with that kind of precision that Bill Clinton issued tonight.
Because he couldn't. Clear and plainly, he couldn't issue a statement like that. I think the reason Bill Clinton's also issuing it is every time an embarrassing moment comes up for Trump, whether it involves the rule of law or foreign diplomacy or episodes like Jeffrey Epstein, you have Trump supporters saying, "What about Hillary Clinton? What about Bill Clinton?" Even though neither one of them are in office anymore, none of them have been on the public scene for quite a long time, it becomes a convenient way to support Trump to say that Trump's critics or the media isn't paying enough attention to the Clintons. Cy Vance's name came up today in the same regard. If you're going to criticize people who overlooked Jeffrey Epstein's, misdeeds, why aren't you paying attention to Cy Vance? All of it is a distraction from the reason that people are paying attention to Donald Trump, which is that he's the president of the United States, and he has a skeleton in his closet that is a mile deep, and it includes people like Jeffrey Epstein. And people are asking the question of Trump because he's wielding real authority and power right now, and Bill Clinton isn't.
So let's take this case down the road, a hypothetical road. Let's assume you got to a point of a conviction with Jeffrey Epstein. At that point, he doesn't have any, in effect, fear of incrimination. So could you then take him, if he was convicted of this, before a grand jury to get under oath testimony from him if he doesn't have Fifth Amendment rights to protect at that point?
You could, although theoretically he may, have some sort of an argument that there was other rights that he still had, but absolutely. I mean, I think the issue really is that after somebody has been convicted by an office and received a significant sentence, they don't really have a lot of incentive to sort of play ball. I mean, look, they may be legally obligated to go in front of a grand jury and tell the truth, but if he is if he's facing decades in prison and he's 66 years old,
a perjury charge wouldn't matter.
It's it's a drop in the bucket.
So Tim, what would the worries be in Donald Trump's mind tonight?
Well, I think he's going to be worried about what compromising information Jeffrey Epstein has about Trump and their relationship. The other big mystery about Jeffrey Epstein isn't just the video goods he might have on different people. No one really knows his sources of funding. Other than
Donald Trump's sources of funding.
Well, Donald Trump or Epstein.
Oh, okay.
So Epstein has been a prominent money manager, but no one ever really knew what his sources of funding were. His original client was Leslie Wexner, the founder of the Victoria's Secret and other clothing companies. He was a multi-billionaire. As far as most people in the business press and in New York know, Wexner was the only single large investor in Epstein's funds, and he clearly had the resources to assemble about $100 million in real estate and support the lifestyle that came along with that without any really clear indications of how he was raising his money. And that's very interesting because it's a similar issue that Donald Trump has, is where do these mystery millions flow into the Trump organization? Where do the mystery millions flow into Jeffrey Epstein's funds? And I think that's another thing that'll be very interesting as this investigation progresses.
Let's listen to the U.S. Attorney today outlining the specifics of the allegations and the crimes against Epstein.
Beginning in at least 2002 and continuing until 2005, Epstein is alleged to have abused dozens of victims by causing them to engage in sex acts with him at his mansion in New York and at his estate in Palm Beach, Florida. The victims, all underage girls at the time of the alleged conduct, were given hundreds of dollars in cash after each encounter, either by Epstein or by one of Epstein's employees. The underage girls were initially recruited to provide Epstein with massages, and often did so nude or partially nude. These massages became increasingly sexual in nature and would typically include one or more sex acts as specified in the indictment. As alleged, Epstein also paid certain victims to recruit additional girls to be similarly abused. This allowed Epstein to create an ever-expanding web of new victims.
Barrett, the details there include what would be statutory rape in the state of New York and in the state of Florida, but in federal law there are no rape charges, so he's just charged under federal law with sex trafficking. Does this evidence package open up the possibility of statutory rape charges in the state of New York and possibly the state of Florida?
Possibly. I'm not sure what the state of Florida would do, but possibly New York would. I mean, I think really the only incentive for the state prosecutors to get involved is if they needed some way that Epstein could be sort of cordoned off from being pardoned, right? I mean, the charges that he is facing in the Southern District are going to carry significant penalties, and so much more so than a statutory rape conviction theoretically would in the state. So I don't think it's a matter of, he needs to be confronted with these serious charges. He's facing about as serious of a charge as you can get right now. So it's not a matter of that. I think at the end of the day, if they wanted, almost like they did with Paul Manafort, if they wanted some sort of charges that could be pardon proof, perhaps those could be New York State charges, but I think it's too early to see.
Can you imagine a pardon for Epstein?
I think Donald Trump can imagine a pardon for almost anyone. So as much as I don't think I could imagine a pardon for someone like him, I think Donald Trump could.
Tim O'Brien and Barrett Berger, thank you very much for starting us off tonight. Really appreciate it. And when we come back, Attorney General William Barr thinks he has found the secret way, the secret path to the citizenship question on the census. Neil Katyal.